Hello, and welcome to Midnight Tales, a space where everyone can immerse themselves in peace and enchantment before drifting off to sleep. Tonight, we'll explore another captivating story that invites calm and lightness, helping you rest and recharge. But first, let's take a moment to gently prepare our bodies and minds for a soothing, restorative night's sleep. Make yourself comfortable, and with each slow inhale and long exhale, allow any cares from the day to slip away. It's not always easy to detach from the hustle and mental overload, especially before bed. However, remember this: the less we worry about how quickly we'll fall asleep, the easier it is for our minds to release any tension. Let the rhythm of your breathing carry away lingering worries, and let the story you're about to hear guide you into deep relaxation. Now, close your eyes and allow the magical atmosphere to softly envelop you. Enjoy the story, and may you find peaceful, restful sleep here on Midnight Tales. Against a blustering March gale, the gatehouse door yielded inward under Clara's shoulder. She wrestled it shut, the latch clicking firmly against the wind's insistent whine. Rain boots shed their muddy rivulets onto the welcome mat as she propped her sodden umbrella near the coat tree, its dripping a quiet counterpoint to the storm. With a sigh that misted the air, she shrugged off her damp trench coat, pushing strands of wind-whipped hair from her brow before carrying a small sack of provisions to the kitchenette counter. In like a lion, out like a lamb. The old saying echoed in her thoughts. Tonight, the lion roared. Perfect conditions, Clara mused, for sealing oneself away, for embracing the hearth's glow. No further ventures into the tempest were planned. She nudged the dial on her countertop oven to preheat, then padded across the compact sitting room toward her bedroom. There, the damp chill of her day clothes surrendered gladly to the soft embrace of well-worn flannel pajamas. Perched on the bed's edge, she tugged on her thickest woolen socks, stretching her liberated feet out with a groan of pure pleasure. The days-long confinement in shoes dissolved into blissful relief. For a quiet moment, Clara sat bathed in the warm circle cast by her bedside lamp, surveying her domain. Renting this converted mews house, nestled beside a grand historic home on the estate grounds, had been pure serendipity during her sabbatical year, riding about Maine's coastal sentinels. It was the ideal refuge, contained, orderly, undeniably charming. Her landlady resided nearby in the main house, offering Clara the solitude of a detached dwelling without the burdens of extensive upkeep. Her bedroom, like the rest of the space, possessed a sweet character. The old carriage house structure boasted appealing hardwood floors, a functional kitchenette, and crucially, a fireplace anchoring the living area, often while gazing from the window above the sink. Clara lost herself in the view of the estate gardens, feeling momentarily like a figure stepped from a storybook. Mustering her energy, she padded silently back across the floorboards to the kitchenette. From the grocery sack emerged a container of takeout macaroni and cheese. Peeling back the plastic film, she slid it into the warming oven, setting the timer for a slow bake, anticipating the glorious, burnished crust that patience would yield. True comfort food deserved its time. The fireplace, modernized at some point to accommodate a gas log, sprang to life with a satisfying whoosh at the flick of a switch, casting flickering amber light across the room. Clara retrieved several notebooks and a pen from her satchel near the door. Work beckoned this evening. International Women's Day approached. A historian friend, teaching high school, had inquired if Clara might speak to her class. Knowing Clara's immersion in lighthouse lore, she'd posed a marvelous question. Had women ever kept the lights? Clara, thrilled by the query, had readily agreed. After a year steeped in maritime history, illuminating the often overlooked contributions of female keepers felt not just appropriate, but essential. The challenge lay only in selecting from the wealth of candidates. Sinking into the plush depths of her favorite armchair, Clara propped her feet on the matching ottoman. She opened a notebook, her eyes scanning the meticulously gathered research. Katharina Vogel, she decided, must be the starting point, the tireless guardian of Robin's Reef Light in New York Harbor. To grasp Katharina's tenacity, one had to begin at her origins. Unlike many women who inherited their posts, Katharina Vogel wasn't born to the lighthouse service, nor even on American soil. In 1882, age 37, she journeyed from Germany to the United States, her young son, Jakob, in tow. Securing work as a cook in a New Jersey boarding house, she encountered a patron named Johann Vogel, the keeper at Sandy Hook Light. Johann began teaching her English. Closeness blossomed into marriage, and Katharina moved to the Sandy Hook Lighthouse with him. Thus, around the age of 40, Katharina Vogel first learned the demanding craft of tending a beacon. Later, in 1885, Captain Vogel received orders, transferring him to Robin's Reef Light, situated roughly a mile north of Staten Island. Compared to Sandy Hook, Robin's Reef Station offered profound isolation, constructed offshore upon a submerged ledge. The stark new reality initially dismayed Katharina. When I first came to Robin's Reef, she confided later in life, the sight of the water, whichever way I looked, made me lonesome. I refused to unpack my trunks at first, but gradually, a little at a time, I unpacked. After a while, they were all unpacked, and I stayed on. Soon after, she gave birth to a daughter, Maria, and the family of 4 settled into their water-bound existence. Clara paused, reflecting on Katharina's words. The woman's quiet fortitude resonated deeply. Widow, mother, immigrant, she had embraced available work, adapted to a challenging occupation, and accepted even the stark solitude of that remote station. Her resolve was formidable, yet further tested when, in 1890, Johann Vogel succumbed to illness. His final words to his wife were reportedly, "Mind the light, cat." Clara smiled faintly. Katharina struck her as someone who scarcely needed the instruction. Naturally, Katharina assumed his full duties while raising her 2 children. Despite her proven competence, her superiors doubted a woman's suitability for the official role. While she flawlessly maintained the light, they persisted in seeking a male replacement. Finally, after several years, they conceded defeat. In 1895, Katharina Vogel was formally appointed keeper of Robin's Reef Light. Clara knew from her research that tending the lamp itself was merely the beginning. Katharina once remarked that the light was more difficult to care for than a family of children. Daily, the lamp demanded attention, cleaning reflectors, scraping ice in winter's grip. Foul weather necessitated activating the fog siren. If it malfunctioned, she resorted to manually striking the heavy fog bell until repairs could be made. Simultaneously, she remained a mother and homemaker. A 1906 New York Times article quoted her saying she had as much housework as the Waldorf Astoria, a famously opulent hotel. Cooking, bed-making, cleaning, all fell to her alone. Even fetching supplies or transporting her children to school on Staten Island required rowing a mile across open water. Clara struggled to truly conceive the immense difficulty of everyday tasks for such an isolated keeper. And of course, Katharina was a rescuer, estimating she saved at least 50 lives from drowning during her remarkable 33-year tenure. Miss Vogel retired in 1919, having witnessed Robin's Reef Light transition from kerosene to oil vapor lamps, and finally to electricity. Towards the end, the 5-room light station housed her son Jakob, now assistant keeper, his wife, and their 5 grandchildren. Katharina spent her final years in a modest cottage on Staten Island, tending a garden, her gaze often drifting toward the distant silhouette of Robin's Reef Light. Upon her passing, the New York Post memorialized her. In the sight of the city of towers and the torch of liberty lived this sturdy little woman, proud of her work and content in it, keeping her lamp alight and her windows cleaned so that New York Harbor might be safe for ships that pass in the night. Yes, Clara affirmed inwardly, Katharina Vogel absolutely belonged in the presentation. Setting her papers aside, she rose from the armchair's comfortable embrace and returned to the countertop oven. Opening the small door, released a fragrant cloud of sharp cheddar. The contents bubbled gently beneath a perfectly toasted golden crust. Her dinner was ready. She transferred the pasta to a plain white plate, retrieved a fork, and carefully carried her prize back to the fireside chair. Curling up once more, she placed the plate on the small adjacent table, watching steam rise enticingly. A moment's cooling was required. Turning back to her notebook, she flipped through the pages, seeking her next lighthouse heroine. Her finger paused at Frankie Mayhew. Unlike Katharina, Frankie had known several lighthouse postings before achieving headkeeper status. Before arriving at Turkey Point Light in Maryland in 1922 with her husband, she had served alongside him as assistant keeper at no fewer than 4 Virginia lighthouses. She remained the assistant when their tenure at Turkey Point began, but her husband passed away in 1925, leaving her a widow at 43. As fate would have it, she wasn't much younger than Katharina Vogel had been upon becoming a head keeper. Frankie immediately shouldered her late husband's responsibilities, yet despite her 2 decades of experience, official appointment proved elusive. Intriguingly, unlike Katharina, Frankie's gender wasn't the obstacle. 3 previous Turkey Point keepers had been women. Instead, the civil service balked at her age, deeming her too old for the demands of the position. Fortunately, Frankie possessed a spirit not easily dissuaded. She appealed the decision, ultimately securing the appointment directly from President Calvin Coolidge, becoming the sole female keeper ever to receive such presidential endorsement. Her salary was set at $1,140 annually, roughly equivalent to $18,000 today. Much like Katerina, Frankie juggled family life with her duties. She raised 3 children, Mabel, Jessie Olga, and Charles. Clara had encountered an old black and white photograph capturing Frankie and young Charles tending turkeys near the lighthouse, a testament to the self-sufficiency required. Reaching the nearest town meant either a lengthy 14-mile drive or an 8-mile boat journey across the Chesapeake. Furthermore, unloading supplies involved navigating 137 steps down to a floating dock, then laboriously hoisting heavy items using a windlass and winch. Unsurprisingly, the family maintained a garden and livestock to sustain themselves. Frankie diligently performed all the standard keeper tasks. Before the light's electrification in 1943, this included replenishing oil in the lamps and trimming wicks. On one occasion, the fog bell mechanism failed. She was forced to ascend to the massive 1,200-pound bell and manually strike its 50-pound clapper 4 times a minute for nearly an hour. During this exhausting ordeal, she missed a phone call from her son-in-law announcing the birth of her granddaughter. Clara chuckled at the image of such a remarkably fit grandmother. Nevertheless, Frankie later confessed, "I was never more exhausted in my whole life," a sentiment Clara readily believed. For 22 years, Frankie faithfully executed this demanding role, retiring at 65 in 1947. Reflecting on her lighthouse service, she famously quipped, "Oh, it was an easy light chore, but my feet got tired, and climbing the tower has given me fallen arches." Her departure marked the end of an era. She was the last serving civilian female lightkeeper in the United States. Thanks to her and the 3 capable women preceding her, Washingtonian Magazine once dubbed Turkey Point Light the feminist lighthouse of the Chesapeake. Echoing Katerina's enduring connection, Frankie retired just 6 miles away, close enough to still witness her beloved station's steadfast beam piercing the night sky. Clara paused, jotting brief notes. Then, with quiet anticipation, she set the pages aside and reached for her dinner. Savoring the rich, cheesy pasta, she gazed into the hypnotic ballet of the fire. The evening deepened, bringing that pleasant languor when relaxation gently loosens the mind's focus. The flames conjured images of the ceaseless vigil required before electricity, tending wicks, feeding flames in lonely towers. Male or female, every keeper embraced immense responsibility. Clara doubted she possessed such fortitude. Luxuriating in the final, decadent bites of her macaroni and cheese, Clara rose once more and carried her plate to the sink. Near the window and door, the kitchen air held a noticeable chill. She retrieved a sweater draped over a nearby chair, pulling it on. Taking her cheerful red kettle from the stove's back burner, she filled it and set it to boil before returning to her research nook and retrieving her notebook. A few more page turns revealed the perfect next candidate, arguably the most celebrated lightkeeper in American history, Isadora Zella Lowe, known universally as Izzy. The second of 4 children born to Captain Horatio Lowe, Izzy's life became intertwined with Lime Rock Light in Newport, Rhode Island, when her father became its second keeper in 1857. Completed only 3 years prior, Lime Rock wasn't exceedingly remote, perched on a ledge just 220 yards offshore, yet it remained an island. All necessities required retrieval from the mainland via rowboat. Young Izzy rapidly mastered the oars, a skill that proved providential. Within 4 months of the family settling at the light station, Captain Lowe suffered a disabling stroke, rendering him unable to work. 15-year-old Izzy stepped forward, assisting her mother with the full spectrum of keeper duties, while also caring for her incapacitated father and chronically ill younger sister. Added to this burden was the daily task of rowing her siblings across the water to school in Newport. Renowned as one of the town's most adept swimmers, Izzy's heroism manifested early. Even before the move to Lime Rock, at age 12, she had rescued 4 men whose boat had capsized using her trusty rowboat. Later, at 27, she famously dashed into icy waters, shoeless, joining her brother to save 2 soldiers whose vessel overturned during a snowstorm. This act garnered significant acclaim. One soldier gifted her a gold watch, while his comrades at Fort Adams collectively presented her with $218 in gratitude. Her bravery culminated in 1881 with the prestigious Gold Life-Saving Medal awarded by the government, making her its sole female recipient. This honor recognized her rescue of 2 more Fort Adams soldiers who had plunged through thin ice while traversing Newport Harbor. In 1877, Izzy's mother fell ill, passing away the following year. Izzy was officially appointed head keeper in 1879, earning $750 per year, the highest salary paid to any light keeper in the nation at that time. Clara's thoughts were punctuated by the insistent summons of the kettle. She padded to the counter, silenced the burner, lifted the kettle, and carefully poured steaming water over a peppermint tea bag nestled in a mug. Above the sink, the window pane rattled briefly as a stronger gust buffeted the gatehouse. Pulling her sweater tighter, Clara carried the fragrant brew back to her armchair, blew gently across its surface, and set it down to steep before returning to her notes. Izzy Lowe never maintained a formal log of her rescues, but the press eagerly disseminated tales of her exploits. Publications like Harper's Weekly and the New York Tribune broadcast her deeds far and wide. Estimates credit her with saving 18 lives over her 54 years on the island. Izzy transformed into a cherished public figure, meeting admirals, presidents, and luminaries, such as the feminist pioneer Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Her final documented rescue occurred at age 63, when a visiting friend inadvertently capsized her own rowboat. By 64, Issy was a beneficiary of the Carnegie Hero Fund, receiving a monthly stipend of $30. The revered lady of Lime Rock Light passed away in 1911, age 69. Bells tolled across Newport, flags dipped to half-mast, and 1,400 mourners attended her funeral. She would undoubtedly have felt immense pride when the station was subsequently renamed Ida Lewis Rock Light, an unprecedented honor for a U.S. light keeper. Her legend even inspired songs. Clara set her notebook down again, lifting her mug. The tea was perfectly steeped. She turned, her gaze drawn once more to the kitchen window. Inky blackness pressed against the panes now, punctuated by the percussive tattoo of cold rain. Occasional squalls drove fat drops against the glass with startling force. She pictured the keepers enduring countless such nights, solitary figures performing vital tasks amidst the worst of the weather, savoring the warmth of her sheltered nook by the fire. Clara knew instinctively who her fourth and final lighthouse heroine must be. Returning mentally to her primary research area, Maine, she opened her notebook to the pages detailing the story of teenage hero Abigail "Abby" Burnham. In 1853, Abby relocated with her family to the profoundly isolated lighthouse on Matanicus Rock. She was the fourth of 9 children born to Keeper Silas Burnham and his wife, Patience. Sources describe Matanicus Rock as among the most remote beacon locations on the eastern seaboard, a barren islet miles from civilization. The nearest supply point, Rockland, lay a challenging 23 miles away by boat. Abby's brother, Benjamin, harbored no interest in lighthouse keeping, preferring life aboard fishing vessels. Meanwhile, seeking to supplement their meager income, Silas also spent time fishing and lobstering, selling his catch in Rockland. Consequently, from the tender age of 15, Abby assumed many of her father's lighthouse duties. This she managed while also caring for her 3 younger sisters and her chronically ill mother. Abby's role as de facto assistant keeper was complicated by the temperamental lard lamps then in use. The New England Historical Society quoted her poignant words. Sometimes they would not burn so well when first lighted, especially in cold weather when the oil got cold. Then some nights I could not sleep a wink all night, thinking nervously what might happen should the light fail. Yet she persevered faithfully, adding, "In all these years, I always put the lamps in order, and I lit them at sunset." Despite the immense responsibility she carried at such a young age, Abby found time to study the logs left by previous keepers, which chronicled devastating storms. Reading of one tempest that had utterly destroyed the original lighthouse fueled her anxiety about the current keeper's house's structural integrity. Proactively, she moved her mother's sleeping quarters to what she deemed the sturdiest section of the dwelling, a prescient decision that would soon save Patience's life. January 1856 brought heightened concern for Silas. The biannual supply ship, expected the previous autumn, had been thwarted by persistent bad weather. Worried about dwindling winter provisions of both food and lamp fuel, he instructed Abby to manage the lighthouse while he sailed to Rockland for supplies. With Benjamin away fishing, Abby was left solely responsible for her sisters, her ailing mother, and the crucial task of keeping the twin beacons burning. Shortly after Silas's departure, a monstrous gale descended upon Matanicus Rock. For 3 days, it relentlessly battered the island, eventually breaching the section of the keeper's house where patients had previously slept. The storm raged on, ultimately inundating the island in knee-deep, frigid seawater. Abby was forced to evacuate her family to the relative safety of the second floor of the North Lighthouse Tower. Against her mother's protests, during a brief lull, she waded through the churning water to the chicken coop. Miraculously, she managed to rescue all but one of her precious hens, shepherding them into the tower. Before the storm finally abated, a colossal wave obliterated the keeper's house entirely. This storm became legendary in New England maritime history. Silas, caught in its fury, couldn't return to the island for 4 agonizing weeks. Throughout this entire period, Abby single-handedly kept both lights operational, undoubtedly preventing numerous shipwrecks on Matanicus Rock's treacherous shores. Thanks to her foresight in saving the chickens, she sustained her family on meager rations of a cup of cornmeal and 1 egg per person each day. According to the Historical Society, the 17-year-old Abby reflected on the ordeal with remarkable composure. Some reason, I know not why, I had no misgivings and went on with my work as usual. For 4 weeks, no landing could be effected. During this time, we were without the assistance of any male member of our family. Though at times greatly exhausted by my labors, but once did the lights fail. Under God, I was able to perform all my accustomed duties as well as my father's. Clara paused, taking another thoughtful sip of tea before turning the page. Unlike Izzy Lowe's celebrated exploits, Abby's heroism went largely unrecognized at the time. In 1861, her father lost his post. Lighthouse keepers were political appointees, and Silas had not supported the newly elected President Lincoln. Abby, however, had formed a deep attachment to the windswept rock. She requested permission to remain and train the incoming keeper, Captain Jonas Grant. As fate unfolded, she fell in love with Grant's son, Isaiah. They married and served together as assistant keepers on Matinicus Rock for 14 years, raising 4 children amidst the waves and wind. In 1875, after 22 years in residence, Abby finally left the island. She and Isaiah were subsequently appointed keepers at Whitehead Light, where they served another 15 years before retiring. In one of her last known letters, Abby confessed she often dreamed of the Matinicus Rock lamps, wondering if the care of the lighthouse will follow my soul. This final sentiment resonated deeply with Clara, prompting reflection on all 4 women. An adamantine conviction seemed to bind them, a certainty that the light represented a calling they were duty-bound to answer. They arrived at this demanding, isolated existence through disparate paths, yet lived it with a shared, steadfast fidelity. Often, their sole reward was the quiet knowledge of duty fulfilled. With a sigh of contentment, Clara closed her notebooks. She felt prepared, equipped to share these remarkable stories. A lazy glance sideways revealed her empty mug. Simultaneously, a profound wave of weariness washed over her. Like Abby's legendary tempest, the March winds continued their assault on the small kitchen window. Mother Nature, it seemed, was signaling bedtime. Setting aside her papers, Clara stood and stretched languidly. She carried the empty mug to the kitchen, placing it gently in the sink. After tidying her satchel for the morning, she switched off the gas flame, plunging the sitting room into cozy darkness. Her welcoming nest of blankets waited, piled high on the bed, tucked into the corner. Clara sat on the edge, peeled off her woolen socks, and slid her feet deep beneath the cool sheets, stretching her toes toward the tightly tucked hem. Pulling the duvet up to her chin, she rolled onto her side and extinguished the bedside lamp. The golden pool of light vanished. She lay enveloped in darkness, listening to the rhythmic drumming of early March rain upon the roof. A yawn escaped her as she burrowed deeper into the pillows. Lulled by the storm's cadence, her eyes drifted shut. Her mind, untethered, floated upward, imagining herself high within a stone tower on some remote, wave-battered isle. She saw herself deftly trimming a wick, striking a match, bringing light to the encroaching dark. Far from feeling adrift, a sense of profound security enveloped her, cradled by the ocean's surge and the storm's wild music. In that liminal space between waking and sleep, she understood. She was a fixed point, a creator of light in the vast darkness, the steadfast presence destined to endure through the long night ahead. Within the quiet confines of their Venetian hostel room, Alara drifted, a world away even as her friend Chloe meticulously coaxed a final curl into place. The city hummed outside, a low thrum beneath the surface of her thoughts, which insisted on replaying the morning's collision. One moment, the cobblestones of a bustling market street rushed up to meet her. The next, she was steadied, held firmly in the unexpected embrace of a stranger. He possessed hair like polished obsidian and eyes the startling, brilliant green of sunlit sea glass. Matteo, he'd introduced himself, and with that single word, the vibrant chaos of the market, the shouts of vendors, the kaleidoscope of produce, the press of bodies, dissolved into an insignificant blur. It felt scripted, cinematic. Alara had braced herself for a polite nod, a swift departure after his rescue, but he lingered. When he asked her, right there amidst the lingering scent of fish and fruit, if she might join him for an evening out, astonishment warred with a dizzying thrill. Even more surprising was her own voice, quick and sure, not only accepting, but suggesting that very night. A slow grin sprayed across Matteo's face before he requested her number. And just like that, a date materialized in the most impossibly romantic city on Earth. Venice. The name itself had been a whispered enchantment since childhood. Alara recalled poring over photographs, mesmerized by the impossible elegance of Gothic facades, rising directly from shimmering water, the serpentine curve of the Grand Canal. It seemed less a real place than a glorious, water-bound dream. She'd vowed then, a small girl captivated by images, that one day she would drift through those liquid streets, inhale the unique perfume of the timeless city. Witness firsthand the stone palazzi standing sentinel over their ancient, aqueous realm. The city's allure, a potent blend of mystery and romance, had pulsed across continents, a magnetic pull that had only intensified over the years. Now, improbably, she was here and going on a date. The sheer wonder of it threatened to overwhelm her, a dizzying joy buoyed by Chloe's unwavering enthusiasm. The moment Alara had tumbled back into their room, breathless with her tale, Chloe had sprung into action, a whirlwind of friendly support. Evening light now slanted through the window as they navigated the crucial pre-date rituals. Laughter bubbled up as Alara watched Chloe sift through the carefully curated selection of clothes. What silhouette? How much kohl for the eyes? Hair up or down? Which shoes? Every angle was considered. Amidst the friendly debate, Alara voiced a flicker of doubt. Maybe I should push it back. Give us time to settle in. Explore together first. Chloe, pausing mid-gesture with a pair of delicate gold sandals, shook her head decisively. Absolutely not. This is serendipity, Alara. Fate nudging you two together. Besides, she added, sinking onto the bed with a theatrical sigh and a genuine smile, the jet lag was hitting her hard. A quiet evening with a book held far more appeal. Alara saw the truth of it in her friend's posture. Decision made. A quick text confirmed their plans. Mateo's reply was instantaneous. He was en route, promising in his words, a night to remember, starting at 7 sharp outside their hostel. A warm hug conveyed Alara's gratitude. Catching her reflection, she admired Chloe's handiwork with her hair, the simple fall of the teal silk dress that seemed to deepen the brown of her eyes and set off her fair hair. A princess poised for adventure in some fabled kingdom. That's how she felt. She'd nearly left the dress behind, deeming it too hopeful, perhaps. Now, its understated elegance felt perfect. The strappy black heels were briefly considered, then dismissed with a shared laugh. Venice demanded exploration on foot. Surrender to its labyrinthine Cali and countless bridges, unburdened by impractical footwear. A glance at the clock sent her towards the door. Purse retrieved, a final wave exchanged with Chloe, whose parting words were a cheerful command to report every detail upon return. Alara stepped into the hallway. The click of the door echoed softly as she descended the stairs. Heart fluttering with anticipation. Would he be there, waiting? Passing through the reception area, she exchanged a wave with the hostel's proprietor, Signor Rossi. His expansive smile was infectious, mirroring the cheerful disposition she'd encountered everywhere. Living in such beauty, she mused, must surely cultivate such lightness of being. Emerging onto the street felt like slipping through a veil into another era. No cars disturbed the quietude, only the footsteps of pedestrians echoing past the shuttered stalls of the nearby Rialto market. By day, this artery, flanking the Grand Canal's western edge, pulsed with life, a centuries-old hub of commerce where locals haggled over glistening fish and pyramids of vibrant produce. Now, in the crepuscular calm, the crowds had thinned. It took only a moment for her eyes to find him. He stood distinct against the mellowing stone, holding a vibrant bouquet of red and pink roses. Matteo, looking impossibly dapper, a wave of happy excitement washed over her. Their greetings tumbled out simultaneously, a brief, shared moment of charming awkwardness. He presented the flowers, their heady perfume intoxicating as Ilara drew them close. The choice was simple, Matteo murmured, his gaze warm, for a name as beautiful as its bearer. He offered his arm, a gesture both courtly and natural, and they began to walk. His voice, melodic and tinged with a local lilt she found captivating, began to weave the story of his city. Venice, he began, his tone rich with affection, rests within a crescent lagoon, you see, over 100 small islands, knit together by some 400 bridges. He gestured expansively. No roads here, only canals. About 150 tributaries feeding the Grand Canal, creating this intricate urban tapestry. From above, the Canalazzo traces a great S, a ribbon of deepest blue, cutting through the terracotta rooftops. Perhaps the only city where water truly dictates the rhythm of life. He spoke of the palaces lining the waterways, Gothic and Renaissance masterpieces seemingly dripping with frescoes and ornate marble, every dome and campanile a testament to vanished splendor. Its uniqueness, Matteo concluded, sweeping a hand towards the unfolding streetscape, lies in this fusion of water and magnificent architecture. Tonight, we delve deeper. Ilara smiled. You're quite the guide, she remarked, his palpable love for Venice making her own anticipation keen. Arm in arm, they ambled onward. Venice, he affirmed, was a city for walking, for losing oneself, but also profoundly romantic, especially experienced from the water, cradled in a gondola. He described the boat's iconic silhouette, its funereal elegance recognized globally. Ilara nodded. She knew it well from countless images. Nothing compares, Matteo declared, to drifting through the canals at twilight, serenaded by the gondolier. Would she like that after dinner? She ventured. A conspiratorial wink. Already arranged. A visit isn't complete without it. As they navigated a narrow back street, the air grew thick with the tantalizing aromas of Italian cooking. Above, the sky ignited, bleeding into shades of deep, vibrant fuchsia. Matteo pointed out venerable churches clad in priceless marble, tall, elegant merchant houses, hinting at the maritime wealth that built this improbable city. Ilara drank it all in, marveling at the stacked, vertical density of the buildings, the sheer audacity of their construction. She'd lost her bearings completely, adrift in a sea of history and beauty, knowing only that their hostel lay somewhere back near the Rialto market. Then, looming ahead, a colossal structure arched into the twilight, adorned with 3 walkways and strung with nascent lights. A bridge, yes, but instantly recognizable. She turned to Matteo, whose smile confirmed it. The Ponte di Rialto, he announced softly, one of the world's most famous spans. Ilara simply stared, momentarily breathless, at its magnificent scale. He recounted its past, the original wooden structure succumbing to time and fortune, the 16th century competition for its stone replacement. Names like Michelangelo were floated, but Antonio da Ponte, Anthony of the Bridge, fittingly, a local talent, ultimately won the commission. Mesmerized, they ascended the steps towards the bridge's apex, walking to the balustrade. Alara gripped the cool stone railing, gazing out over the broad expanse of the Grand Canal. It was the view from 1,000 postcards, undeniably iconic. Palazzi in hues of ochre, rose, and cream flanked the waterway, their red-tiled roofs glowing warmly. Below, a flotilla of boats navigated the blue-green water, sleek gondolas gliding near lumbering barges. Matteo identified the largest vessel, the Vaporetto, Venice's water bus. Little steamer, he translated the name, a relic of its steam-powered predecessors. In a city of canals for streets, such transport felt utterly logical. They watched a Vaporetto pause near the bank, a couple carefully boarding with assistance, the boat rocking gently before resuming its journey into the aquatic thoroughfare. The Grand Canal was undeniably the city's vibrant heart. Looking down, they even saw gondoliers serenading passengers. As they passed beneath the Rialto's massive arch, Alara leaned her arms on the railing, absorbing the scene. Matteo joined her, and they stood in companionable silence, witnessing the ceaseless ballet of watercraft. La Serenissima, the most serene. The nickname felt profoundly true in this moment. Laughter drifted on the air. Fellow onlookers seemed as captivated as she was. The sunset painted pale velvet strokes across the deepening sky, an extraordinary spectacle. Slipping out her phone, Alara captured the vista, then turned to snap a picture of Matteo. He, in turn, flagged down a passerby, requesting a photo of them both against the glorious backdrop. The kind stranger obliged as Matteo casually draped an arm over Alara's shoulder. Their slightly self-conscious smiles drew a chuckle from the photographer. A handsome couple, he commented, returning the phone before melting back into the throng. Matteo winked at Alara, capturing one last image of her against the fading light. The best one yet, he declared. She tucked her phone away as the final rays vanished, leaving behind a scene of unparalleled beauty. Romance felt tangible, woven into the very air. As if on cue, lights began to prick the windows lining the canal, their reflections shimmering on the water. Ephemeral mists coiled upwards from the inky depths, veiling the grand buildings in soft mystery. I could stand here forever, Alara breathed. I don't think anything else in Venice could possibly top this. Matteo nodded. I understand. The Grand Canal, it truly is the soul of the city. Eventually, they turned from the railing, arms still linked with arm, descending the steps back to street level. Above, the night sky unfurled, studded with stars. Matteo guided her to a quaint trattoria tucked onto a corner overlooking the water. He'd secured a table in the back, the one, he assured her, with the finest view. They settled in as a waiter approached with a cheerful "Buonasera" and handed them menus. As he retreated, Matteo leaned in conspiratorially. This place is authentic, not like the tourist traps. Alara laughed. Good thing I'm dining with a local, then. Perusing the offerings, she asked for his recommendation. After a thoughtful scan, he suggested the fritto misto, mixed fried seafood, to start, followed by risi e bisi, a creamy rice and pea dish unique to the region, given the restaurant's reputation for generous portions. They agreed to share. The waiter returned, swiftly noting their choices. A cool breeze stirred Ilara's hair. The briny scent of the canal mingled with distant laughter, forming a perfect soundtrack to their meal. Each bite, Ilara proclaimed, surpassed the last. An effortless ease settled between them, conversation flowing naturally, punctuated by shared laughter. Time seemed to dissolve in the pleasant rhythm of their exchange. Too soon, the waiter reappeared, gently informing them of the approaching closing time. Matteo settled the bill, sensing Ilara's slight disappointment that the evening might be concluding. He reached across the table and took her hand. A smile touched his lips. Here, in this city of canals and mist, he murmured, the night is only just beginning. It was time, he announced, for their gondola ride. Delight surged through Ilara. The adventure wasn't over. They stepped out of the restaurant, strolling alongside the canal's edge. Ilara's breath caught when she saw it. A sleek, black vessel waiting patiently, its brass seahorse gleaming softly in the ambient light. The perfect coda to a perfect first date. As they settled into the cushioned seats, the gentle lapping of water against ancient stone walls filled the momentary silence. Then, smoothly, the gondola began to glide away from the fundamenta. Just as Matteo had promised, the gondolier's voice rose in a haunting, lovely melody. A profound sense of peace washed over Ilara, serene and calming. She looked at Matteo, her smile conveying everything. Thank you, she whispered, for the most romantic Venetian adventure. The gondola carried them deeper into the liquid labyrinth, away into the heart of the Venetian night.